I am doing it. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our Department of Marine Geosciences weekly seminar series before we go to Passover holiday. So next week there is no seminar, guys, in case you didn't notice. So today we are hosting Dr. Netta Shalev from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. A little bit about Netta. Netta is a isotope geochemist specializing in metal stable isotopes such as magnesium and stable strontium. Her research focuses on the chemical fluxes between major Earth surface reservoirs, including the ocean crust, continental crust, and the critical zone, as well as their variations throughout Earth's history. She did her bachelor, master, and PhD at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and the Geological Survey of Israel, and a postdoc at the ETH in Zurich in Switzerland. In September 2023, after almost 7 years at the ETH, she moved back to the Hebrew University, where she is currently a senior lecturer, which is equivalent to assistant professor at the Institute of Earth Sciences. So thank you very much for coming all the way north. Thank you. And today, Netta is going to talk about tracing the ocean magnesium budget in the past with magnesium isotopes. So, Netta, the podium is yours.
Thanks. Thank you. And thank you for coming and for people joining from home. My talk will be divided into 3 parts. In the first part, I will speak about the oceanic magnesium budget, and I'll try to convince you that it is important and interesting. Then I will show with an example from the past around 20 million years how we can use magnesium isotopes to constrain it. And then in the third part, I will speak a little bit about archives and how we can reconstruct seawater magnesium isotope composition in the geological past. So let's start from the first part. So magnesium is a major element in seawater, and it is a part of the so-called conservative elements in the ocean. And these are the elements that are here in blue. And they all have very high concentrations and very long residence times. And these residence times are much, much longer than the mixing time of the ocean, which means that their concentrations and isotope composition are almost homogenic everywhere in the ocean. And in order to change them, if you want to change, for example, magnesium concentration in seawater or the isotope composition of magnesium, we need a global scale, very long-term change in one of the processes that controlling the magnesium cycle. And when I say long-term here, I mean on a million-year timescales. Okay. So magnesium is supplied to the ocean by weathering of the continental crust, the same process that over the long term removes CO2 from the atmosphere. And it is taken from the ocean by precipitation of carbonate minerals that also contain carbon, and especially dolomite, which is a calcium magnesium carbonate mineral in which magnesium is a major element. And it is also taken from the ocean by hydrothermal reactions with the oceanic crust. And in these reactions, seawater infiltrates into the oceanic crust, its temperature rises, and magnesium is taken up to form secondary minerals in the crust. And these processes are controlled by volcanism here at mid-ocean ridges, a process that also supplies CO2 to the ocean atmosphere system. So we can say in overall that the cycles of magnesium and carbon, the long-term carbon cycle, are closely interlinked. And therefore, the magnesium budget of the ocean is also linked to Earth's long-term climate change. Also, an important part of what we know of how the carbon cycle behaved in the deep past, and when I say deep here is tens or hundreds of millions of years, is coming from models like this one. That includes, as you can see here, this is the magnesium budget of the ocean and also the calcium budget of the ocean. So these are major parts in such models. And for these models, they need some data. And this is part of the data they need to use. What you see here is the y-axis here is the magnesium output flux ratio between the two main outputs, the dolomite in blue and the hydrothermal sink in white. And this is with time throughout the Phanerozoic, which is the 550-ish millions of years. So we see changes, okay, in this in the ratio between the two output fluxes of magnesium. And this data, together with many other data, of course, was used in such models to reconstruct the concentration of carbon in the ocean and atmosphere throughout the Phanerozoic. But there is a problem here, because despite its importance for these models, some aspects of the magnesium cycle are really unclear, especially these two enigmatic sink fluxes. What we do know is that the magnesium concentration in seawater has varied throughout Earth history. And what you see here is the seawater magnesium to calcium. And here you see something like 250 million years. And you can see here that we have a rise in the magnesium to calcium ratio of seawater over the past 100 million years. And this is also a rise in magnesium concentration. So it's not only the magnesium to calcium, it's also the magnesium concentration itself. And if we focus now on the 20 million years, this rise is even stronger, and also the rise in magnesium concentration is stronger. And the question here is, which mechanisms responsible for such changes? So one option that some people suggested was that in recent years or recent times, recent million years, we have less dolomite formation, and this is what is causing the rise in magnesium concentration. And this is nice, but the problem is that the way dolomite form is still enigmatic. And according to a conventional concept, dolomite precipitate mainly in shallow, warm, evaporitic conditions. And then to answer some of the questions that we have just raised, geologists went to the field, sampled some rocks, and measured the percentage of dolomite in carbonate rocks. And this is what you see here in the upper panel. And they did it with age. Okay, so this is again the Phanerozoic. And from this compilation, they calculated, together with some data on the hydrothermal system, they calculated what we have already seen, okay, the ratio between the dolomite and the hydrothermal magnesium sink. Okay, this is coming from this one. And what we see here again is that dolomite in the last 20 million years is very low, the percentage in carbonate rock. And also here, it's something like 2% of all magnesium outputs. And this is going well with the suggestion that is saying that dolomite is scarce in modern oceans because such shallow, warm, evaporitic environments are very limited. And therefore, enhanced dolomite formation is related to periods in the past of high seawater level, high CO2, high temperatures. But can it really explain this? Okay, and that's a problem now because magnesium to calcium and also magnesium concentration in seawater is a non-unique proxy. Okay, this rise can be due to less dolomite, that's true, but it can be also if we have less hydrothermal circulation. And it can be also if we have more inputs. So there are several scenarios that can explain this. And for that, we need another proxy to make it unique. And with that, we will go to at least my favorite proxy, stable isotopes, and especially the coolest stable isotopes, magnesium isotopes. Okay, so that's the second part. So magnesium has three stable isotopes, 24, 25, and 26. And we use 26 to 24 ratio in a regular delta notation, exactly like delta 18 or any other stable isotopes that you know. And in 2006, people are showed that seawater, and here it's all minuses, okay, so it's a bit confusing, but try to be with me. Seawater is isotopically heavier than the riverine inputs, okay, it's less negative. And then in 2021, Mayfield et al. Also measured the groundwater inputs, and the groundwater is even more negative. So we can say in general that seawater is isotopically heavier than all inputs. And that requires an isotope fractionation in one of the sink fluxes that would preferentially take the lighter isotopes from seawater and keep it heavy. Okay, so these are the three outputs. Dolomites are indeed a light sink, okay? So they incorporate preferentially the light magnesium isotopes. And therefore, if we have more dolomites, it would make red gears heavier, it would make seawater heavier. Then we have the two hydrothermal type of systems. One of them is the on-axis, okay, on-axis at mid-ocean ridges at high temperatures. Seawater infiltrates in, and all the magnesium is removed in the processes at high temperatures. So the fluids that are coming back at mid-ocean ridges would have zero magnesium in them. So there is no isotope effect on seawater because no magnesium is coming back from this system. On the other hand, if these reactions occur at lower temperatures, at ridge flanks, then part of the magnesium would go back. And this is a heavy, isotopically heavy sink. So the heavier isotopes would preferentially incorporated into the crust, into the solid phase, into the secondary minerals that are forming in these systems. And the fluids that circulate back to the ocean would make it lighter. Okay, so it's going against what we need. So in order to understand exactly what the meaning of that for the budget, wait, I want to say something actually before. So, sorry. So if this rise is indeed because we have less dolomite formation, okay, throughout these 20 million years, how we would expect the delta 26 to behave in the last 20 million years? Any ideas? Would it go up, down, or be constant? Okay. So, yeah.
So dolomites are from the lighter isotope.
They are taking the lighter isotope, so they tend to make seawater heavier. Okay. So if we have less dolomite,
lighter seawater.
Yeah, then seawater should go down because there is less a process that removes the lighter isotopes. Okay. So we would expect if we now put here a record of the Netta 26, which I will do in a minute, we would expect the delta 26 to go down. Okay, this is going up, concentration going up, delta 26 should go down. Okay, it's a bit okay. So in 2014, the first record that is trying to reconstruct seawater delta 26 came out, and this record is from foraminifera, and it indeed showing a decrease, as you would expect from the dolomite suggestion, or the less dolomite suggestion. So we was happy, but only for 1 year, because a year after, another record came out. And this record is from limestone, and it is completely different because it is showing here in the last 20 million years, this is not a decrease. It is kind of constant, maybe even a slight increase. And then who's right? So in 2017, another record from corals came out, agrees with this one. And in 2022, another record from dolomites came out, completely agrees with this too. Okay, so we can say that the delta 26 of seawater is kind of constant throughout the last 20 million years. And it is constantly heavier than the inputs. Okay, so now I will say what I started to say before. So to understand what the meaning of that to the budget, we did some calculations. Okay, cool. So we calculated the budget, and since that was in 2019, we couldn't have this. So this calculation is not including the groundwater. And for that, we use two mass balance equations. First is the magnesium concentration mass balance, or the magnesium mass balance, and the isotope, the magnesium isotope mass balance. And in these two equations, we roughly know all parameters in certain ranges, except for two. And these two are the dolomite flux. Okay, so the removal, magnesium removal flux to form dolomite, and the magnesium removal flux into the low temperature ridge flux hydrothermal systems. And so we can calculate that because this is two equations with two unknowns, and these are the results. So here you see the dolomite flux, and here the low temperature hydrothermal flux, and all the possible solutions are in the blue area. And what is clearly seen here is that the dolomite flux must be much, much higher than the conventional concept. Okay, that's something like an order of magnitude higher. And if we calculate the dolomite flux as a percentage from all outputs, okay, then between this point and that point, then it should be between 40 and 60% of all outputs. Okay, it's related to the 2% of what they said based of what they said based on the rock compilation. Okay, so if we go back here, this is the last 20 million years, 2% here, and if we now put what magnesium isotope budget is saying, and this line should be here, okay, around 50%. So we can say that, we can suggest that there is a significant dolomite formation in the past 20 million years, and that contradicts the conventional concept that dolomite formation in the deep and cold neogene oceans is limited. And this may be in favor of other controls of dolomite formation rather than temperature, such as, for example, microbial mediation. And we can also suggest that models like this, that between dolomite formation and temperature CO2 need to be revised. But if we come back to that question, okay, what is causing this rise? So this calculation that we did cannot really, it cannot fully answer this, Because to do that, we need to reconstruct the magnesium budget from before the rise has started. Because even if we have lots of dolomite here, maybe it is still less than what was here. Okay, so we need to do the same thing also for 100 or 150 million years and then compare between them. And for that, we need records, okay? We need, and with that, I would go to the next part, to the last part. We need records of the delta 26 of seawater throughout at least 150 million years. And what you see here now is all the data that we have. The empty symbols are those that I showed before for the Cenozoic for the last 60, 70 million years. But on top of them, I put all the data that we have from dolomites in purple and from halite in green. And what you can see here is that if we go deeper in past, we have large gaps, okay? And also these two records, the dolomites and the halite, they have huge variability, even if we go to one data set, okay? This variability is almost 1 per mil, which is almost the entire variability that we can expect from seawater. And also the halite. So the halite, I will not speak on it today, but the authors, Shia et al., they say that the variability of halite is most probably due to solid inclusions into the halite, like magnesium evaporites or carbonates. But the dolomite, so I will speak a little bit on this. So here several factors may affect dolomite delta 26. And to understand what factors are controlling this and making this huge variability, we went to, well, not me, but my collaborators, because that's in Qatar, to one of the very few environments in which dolomite forms today. And this is a Sabkha environment, and this specific Sabkha is called Dohat Paishat in Qatar. A Sabkha is an evaporatic tidal flat, and it has three zones, an evaporatic lagoon that you can see here as well. Then we have the intertidal zone that contains living microbial mat that can be seen in a very black color here. And then the Sabkha itself, the supertidal zone that occasionally gets flooded by the lagoon water. And then the lagoon water gets onto the Sabkha. Some of it infiltrates the mud or the sediment, and on the same time it gets more and more evaporated, and we get some evaporites. So there is gypsum, there is halite, etc. So what my collaborators did is to take three very short cores. Okay, these are cores of half a meter, something like that, into the sediment in three places. Okay, so the green, orange, and gray, and also lagoon water. And they took also pore water. They sampled pore water with depths of the core. And then we measure the delta 26 of all these samples, and these are the results. This is depth in the core in centimeters. And what the first thing that you can see here is that lagoon water here is exactly the same as open seawater. So there is no fractionation in the lagoon, which is nice. And then we see here that the dolomitic sediment is isotopically lighter. Okay, it has lower delta 26, which was expected. And all pore water are heavier than open seawater and the lagoon water, which is also kind of expected because the dolomite preferentially takes the lighter isotopes, so it makes the residual magnesium in pore water heavier and heavier. So I will refer to this as Riley distillation effect, okay? what you can see here is in just half a meter core, we see a variability in the pore water of 0.7 per mil, and in the dolomite of more than 1 per mil. Okay, so that's huge in terms of magnesium isotopes. And if this is indeed a Rayleigh distillation effect, then we can plot the delta 26 of the pore water over the line of the magnesium concentration, and then we would expect to see it linear here. So I would just put this for a minute. So first we have the lagoon water, we have evaporation that increases the magnesium concentration, but without any fractionation of the isotopes. And then at a certain point, it starts to percolate into the sediment, and then dolomite starts to form. So we can see here from the upper part of the deep to the deeper part of the core, we see that we have less and less magnesium, and the isotope composition of the residual magnesium in the pore water gets heavier and heavier, as we would expect from a Rayleigh distillation process. And this is also what we see here. Here, it's not exactly the same because there is no order from upper to deeper, and the slope is a bit different. So the way we interpret the green results is that we have a mixing between other parts of the subca and fresh lagoon, evaporated lagoon water.
Which sample is the green?
So there are different cores, and the green one is the core that is the most far away from the lagoon. So our interpretation is that there is an active dolomite precipitation here and here, but here we don't have an active dolomite precipitation. There is dolomitic sediment, but we think it's like the 1,000 years or something like that. Okay, and with a Rayleigh distillation process, the slope here and here should be the isotope fractionation. Okay, so we have an isotope fractionation with some error that is between minus 1.7 and minus 1.4, which is what is kind of expected for the temperature of the subca. Okay, so to summarize this, from seawater to the lagoon, we have no change. Then from the lagoon to pore water, we have Rayleigh distillation effect that tends to get the delta 26 up. And if we have mixing back with fresh lagoon water, it would take it down, but only down to the lagoon value. Okay, it cannot get lighter. And we don't see any other effect here. These are the only two effects that we see. We don't have any mixing of other stuff. And then from pore water to the dolomite, we have a fractionation factor. These are the values that we get, and they go well with the experimental equilibrium temperature-dependent fractionation by Lee et al. 2015. So because they go well with an equilibrium fractionation, we can say that we do not detect any important other effects like kinetic effects, vital effects, etc.
So no biology.
There is lots of biology there. The biology is linked to the dolomite formation, but it seems that it does not affect the isotope fractionation of magnesium. But it is for sure important. Without the biology, there was no dolomite there. Okay, so if I go back to this figure, now we can, so based on what we learned from the Qatari site, modern site, we can say that the viability, the huge viability of dolomites in one data set can be just a Rayleigh distillation. Okay, so the entire variability can be because of Rayleigh distillation processes. because we see a huge variability only in half a meter core in the modern dolomite. Okay, so that's the important factor controlling dolomite delta 26. There are other factors that can contribute to the variability, like the temperature in which they form, calcite admixture that can change this value, etc. But they are less important. Okay, so what are the solutions, right? Because we want to use dolomites as an archive and we want to reconstruct delta 26 of seawater in the past. So the first solution is to use the lowest value. Okay, the lowest value is the least Rayleigh affected. We can never know that this is the lowest value everywhere, but if we have more data from different sites and they all show similar lowest value, then we are more and more sure about that. Then we can target open systems as they did in Huerta 2022. And we can also supplement our study with other tools like sedimentary, petrographic, geochemical, etc., in order to find these open systems and to prove that they are really open. Okay, because open system would not be affected by Rayleigh distillation. There is always fresh magnesium coming in. And we can also measure, if we want to work hard, we can measure calcium isotopes together with the magnesium isotopes. Some laboratories do that. And then they can really know which samples are from open systems and which samples are from closed systems if they use both isotope compositions together. And of course, other ideas are welcome. Yeah, with that, that's the end of the talk. Just to summarize quickly, reconstructions of the oceanic magnesium budget can help us understand the past Earth. And magnesium isotopes are a cool tool. And they can really help us to reconstruct the oceanic magnesium budget. But we need different well-studied archives. So that's it. And if you're interested in taking part, please contact me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Netta. It was really, really enlightening for us, especially that most of the students are working on the ocean. So I open for the podium for questions.
Yes, I have a question, please. It's regarding the first bullet point. And I'm a bit confused because in the first bullet point, you're talking about the magnesium budget, which is the amount of magnesium in the seawater, right? But throughout your talk, you were talking about the ratio between the heavy and the light isotopes. You were actually trying to reconstruct just the ratio and not the amount. Or can you explain?
So what we're trying to reconstruct is the fluxes that determines the amount of magnesium that we have in the ocean. Okay, because if we see that in some periods we have more magnesium, in some periods we have less, something has changed in the input and output fluxes. So for example, we can have more weathering that would bring in more magnesium, or more and less dolomite, or more and less hydrothermal activity. And we can do that only with the concentration of magnesium in seawater. That's fine, but it would be much stronger. It would be twice stronger if we do that in combination. So then we have two equations instead of one. Okay, we can use one equation that would be the mass balance of magnesium that would deal with the magnesium concentration. But if we have reconstruction of the magnesium isotopes, we can add another equation. So now we have two equations. So it is twice stronger than what we can do with only magnesium budget.
And the question about the second part. You showed
quickly. Oh, wait. That's the other part. That's the slide that I removed. Yeah.
the fluxes. Here it is.
Yeah.
we have two fluxes where it's reconstructed for the past, but you showed that we have a problem in the last 20 million years.
Yeah.
What can you say about the rest of the?
Yeah. So, so what? It's a bit tricky because this is based on the rock record compilations, and these compilations include huge amount of samples. But I just put a question mark on these compilations, and I think that there is a problem with these compilations because the rocks are coming from places that is convenient for Western researchers to go and sample. So there are thousands of samples in these compilations, but they are all coming from North America and the Russian platform. Okay, the world is much bigger than that, and I think it is just not representative. So it really, so first, yeah, for sure, we need more compilations. We need compilations that include Eastern Asia. There is lots of dolomite there. We need compilations that include the ocean floor. Okay, that's most of the surface. But I think, like for me, maybe because I like stable isotopes and I like magnesium isotopes, I think that if we reconstruct now, if we have a good record of the delta 26 of seawater throughout this time, then we can use this to say how much dolomite was, or we can create this figure. And I don't know what it will give us, but that's a thing that we should do. Okay, that's what my group is working on, or part of what my group is working on. But we need archives, good archives. That's the then calculation is easy, but good archives is tricky.
I have a question about the work that you did in Qatar is something that is measuring dolomite today.
Yeah.
Did you try to look for similar settings that are in the past? For example, the Dead Sea that has dolomite in the rocks around it.
Yeah.
Because go like you are trying to go 20 million years, but if you look for something that is 1 million years or 500,000 years or something like that, to have a sequence of.
Yeah, so this is what we are trying to do, to go to all the dolomites and measure them and to get the lightest value and try to reconstruct seawater from this. The strength in Qatar was, or in modern system, is that we hold also the pore water.
Yeah.
So when you go to all the dolomites, you don't have the water. Yeah. But you can still know, or at least you can do your best to know if that's an open system, if that's a closed system. If you go to a certain, for example, I had a master student in Zurich that I haven't showed it here because it's not published yet. And he sampled some dolomites from the Alps, from southern Switzerland, Triassic dolomites, and they all showed very narrow range. Even though it took like, I don't know, a few tens of samples, they all were very narrow range. So that's an open system. That's good for us. And we can use it to reconstruct Triassic values. But then you can go to another place and for example, Ordovician evaporatic basin in China, and then you see that whatever you sample within the evaporatic basin has huge range, like just Riley distillation. And if you go to the slope, to the dolomites that are on the slope, they have narrow range, and that's an open system. So these are the things that we're trying to do what we can.
Can you go back to the graph where you showed the three major nuts that have the effect of the Rayleigh distillation?
Yeah, I hope I know this one. Yes.
Were you able to say sorry, what's the word?
What's the word?
To allocate, I guess, a major event to each of the three data sets, or maybe a major difference in today's art compared to the other two.
You mean events that we start major events? I actually wanted to do that. Well, I want to do that still. But just to say from first look, these are not my data. Okay, so I don't know like all the sedimentology, etc. But just from a first look, if we take the lowest value, it doesn't seem that there is much change, right? This is more than seawater, this line. So, yeah, yeah. We really need more data here. And we need also to go deeper into this data to see, at least to take out some of the variability that we can, like if there is calcite admixture, we can see it in the chemistry. Temperature, we can try to get more into that. But I really wanted to see, so this is Cretaceous, okay? And that's a change from calcite to aragonite sea and things that should have large effect on these things. But and I really wanted to see here some, I don't know, big change, but yeah, some trend, but there isn't. Or at least it seems like there isn't. But I think this is something that really needs more. First, it needs more data, and then it needs more insight into the data, okay? Because this variability is a problem. Yeah, I want to do that.
Maybe there are questions from the audience, virtualized audience, I mean.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Hallelujah. So you do hear me. You were just playing it, huh?
Yes. No, now we hear you.
I have a couple of questions. One is simple, is about the sources of the data. You said that they come from convenient places. Do they incorporate well drilling or well coring from the industry, for example?
No. There is, yes, but only from the US. Yes. They do incorporate some oil company data, but only from the US.
That is potentially, where you would find the recent dolomites would be there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I can
but
just
you're saying, you can just agree. Yeah.
It doesn't incorporate also even the IODP data.
Wow.
No, because this is from the 80s. Even though they don't even incorporate what was in the 80s, the DSDP data. So it is really non-representative, I would say. And there is lots of data out there that should be compiled. Yeah.
But it's because they never measured isotopes there?
No, not the isotopes, just the dolomite percentage in carbonate rocks. They do measure that.
Yeah,
right?
that is measured.
That is measured. It
But
just
it's not
it not
compiled.
compiled. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
probably even more in many of those things, probably even more than just the fractionation of you would have, at least in the IODP, you would have even isotopic work, wouldn't you? And all the samples are still there, or many samples are still there available.
Yeah, the data is there, it is available, but no one has compiled it.
Mm-hmm.
We did a little bit. There was a student at TTH that compiled a little bit of the ODP data, and looking for students that will come and do that. Really, because the data is out there. There were like since the 80s, there were in recent years there were like 2 additional compilations that are newer, but one like none of them used the IODP data. One of them, the most recent, used river chemistry to try to do that, but they also only did that on rivers in Europe. They have maybe 1 or 2 in Australia, but it is still very, I would say, non-representative. And also they get something that is not similar to the compilations from the 80s. So, and there is another one that another compilation that they did some published data from different places, but it is also non-representative, and this looks completely different from all others. So, yeah.
The Chinese, they are the potential.
Yes. Yeah.
They are the potential.
So
you only need to incite them to do that.
Yeah. So one of the newer compilations is done by Chinese researchers, and they took literature data, so it's not China compilation, like it's not focused on China, and it looks completely different from all others. So
So how can you say something about it? We have all kind of data, which each one shows something else.
Yeah, it is very hard if you're trying to sample rocks to make something that would be representative for the entire world. You really need to, I don't know, you need to think about it statistically somehow. Yeah, it is for sure non-representative. But if you do the magnesium budget of the ocean, then it's representative. Yes, because the ocean gather all the signal from the entire world, and then it's like on a stirrer, and then records it. So that's why magnesium isotopes are cool.
I have a couple of other additional questions. One, the mixing in the ocean. When you say that the mixing time scale of the ocean is much shorter than what was it? The time scale of the magnesium change, right?
Yeah.
But still, different sources have different signatures of magnesium, and they are supplied continuously into the ocean. So you would expect that the ocean wouldn't really be uniform at any given time. There should be differences like in front of rivers or in areas that are like near the Sabha in Qatar. The water you're saying is the same like all the ocean water, and that's a very puzzling thing because you are actively changing the composition. Something there is not clear to me how the composition remains stable within water bodies, because the ocean does have water bodies and does for a little while should have a different fractionation.
Yeah. So first, that's the measurement. So it is like that, but the meaning of that is that seawater is a huge source of magnesium. It is really hard to change it, even in a closed or semi-enclosed system like these lagoons in the Sabca. Like seawater is enough strong with respect to magnesium concentrations in order to keep it constant. And yeah, we actually expected to see some contribution of even fresh water or something like that. And even concentrations do not change with seasons or something like seawater is just such a strong source of magnesium. So that's the meaning of that. And also measurements in different places in the ocean today, in the modern ocean, gave the same value.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Another question. You were at the very beginning. You said that you put two contributors to the magnesium balance. One was the dolomite, and the other was hydrothermal circulation. High temperature, low temperature, but hydrothermal circulation is just a process. Where does the magnesium go there? And does it go to different places in the high temperature versus the low temperature?
It does. But the high temperature is not, let's say, it's not so important for us because nothing is coming back from there. Low temperature, it is important, and we did some effort to determine the isotope fractionation. And what I can say is that magnesium goes to secondary clay minerals. And clay minerals, like autogenic clay minerals that take the magnesium from the fluid. And it is like the fluids are going back to the ocean with less magnesium, that the amount of magnesium that is removed is also a function of temperature. And like at least I was lucky to be able to measure some of these returning fluids for magnesium isotopes, and we can see the isotope fractionation there. So the fluids are coming back lighter in magnesium isotopes, and this is all. The isotope fractionation is also depends on the temperature of the system. So we know something about that, but there is still. It would be nice to get more data from these systems as well. Like these systems are not well constrained. I would say the low temperature.
I think, thank you, Itzik. Do you have another question? I think we need to close, but Netta will be extremely happy to answer.
Yeah.
So with these words, thank you, Netta, again. And again, next week we don't see each other. There is Passover, and the week later there is a speaker from Yale online, obviously. So please don't forget. Okay. Thanks. See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.